And good morning. It's April, which is Alcohol Awareness Month. I'm Diane Fontenot, the Seacoast Mental Health Center Program Manager for the Substance Use Disorder Program, and am here with a couple of my comrades. And we're going to do a little bit of discussion, just talking about our experiences, what we've experienced personally, and what we've seen in the field, working in the field of substance use disorders, to raise awareness around alcohol and substance use disorders. John, would you like to introduce?
Sure. Good morning. Thanks, Diane. My name is John Burns. I'm the director for SOS Recovery, and I'm a person in long-term recovery. I am also a family member. So I've had a family member who has struggled with alcohol, heroin addiction for several years, and have just had a lot of exposure to this field in the work I do.
Rebecca?
And hi, I'm Rebecca Troop. I'm the Vice President of Community Relations at Seacoast Mental Health Center. I'm also a woman in long-term recovery from alcohol addiction. And so, from the work that I do in the community, I do a lot of writing, and I've done some speaking about it and just worked with a lot of young women in the field and get to sort of, I have a lot of exposure, obviously, with working closely with Diane and with partners like John and his organization.
So I think one thing that's important for people to know is that the great thing that has evolved in our country and in New England, in our state, in the last 5 to 10 years, but definitely the last 5, is that there are many, many more open doors to seeking recovery and different levels of recovery, acceptance for who you are, where you're at, and what you bring in, how much or how little you're ready for. There are so many different avenues now to recovery versus one traditional 12-step, and I absolutely won't knock the 12-step program because it's saved countless lives. But I think, for first thing is for people to get past that, is this really a thing for me, and how much of a thing is it for me, and that battle within their own head to decide to show up and say, okay, I'm going to explore how much or how little of this that I really want. And there are terrific community resources to guide people in that. And New Hampshire has everything from your community recovery organizations that, again, are on the front lines, on the ground. They meet you. They have the clubhouse. You can come in and sit down and relax in a nice sofa and just sit, living room atmosphere, talk to people about what you're going through, and knowing that walking through that door is a tremendously scary, courageous thing to do. And everyone on the other side of the door understands that because they've all been there. And I know that the idea of walking up to somewhere like SOS or somewhere new and walking through that door to say, I think I might have a problem and I don't know what to do, is terrifying. And at the same time, if you can understand that the people on the other side of those doors absolutely understand that feeling and want to help you get through it and make you feel welcome as quickly as possible, that's a huge step. And I see that as probably the most beneficial harm reduction approach to treatment that our state has really embraced over the last several years.
Yeah, and I think one of the nice things that we've identified so the silver lining of the pandemic is the advent of all this digital technology that's out there now that wasn't really available as prevalently as it is now a year ago. So, I mean, for instance, we added a talk feature to our website at SOS Recovery, where whenever we're open, that's live. And if you click on it to chat with someone, you actually have one of our staff on the other line in like a chat room. So, for, one of the things we see in our community is social anxiety. Picking up that phone can be really tough. Let alone, here I am as role leading a recovery community organization. And I always say, like, if I was struggling with my own, like, being more of a, with kind of my own anxieties, I don't know that I would walk into a recovery center if I didn't know somebody with me. Like, I really don't, because like, if you're looking at it from the outside and you're not familiar with that community, the area to walk into this big 2,000 square foot, like, I don't know what goes on inside there.
Mhm.
It's a completely safe space, but that's a scary, like, I would say those people, the people that walk through our doors for the first time, like, that's a huge step. It's scary. So we have, so we've added some of these things like this chat line where you can click on, or just calling the center, and it's not unusual for people to call and say they want to come in, but they're just not ready to. And so, like, I often tell staff, tell them, meet them out in the parking lot.
Mhm.
I mean, even as a family member, I remember going to my first family support meetings, and I probably went to 5 before I ever attended one because I circled parking lots. And I was like, well, way too many cars in there. That's a big meeting. I'm not going in that one.
Right.
Like, the next night, well, there's only 3 cars in the parking lot. It must be a really bad meeting. There's nobody going for that one. And like, that fear that somebody would see me walking through the door as a person in recovery, let alone as a family member. Like, I think looking at digital resources where maybe you can get online and sit in a meeting that's digital and not turn on your camera and just hide and listen and see if it resonates with you is a great perspective nowadays.
Yeah, that would have been really fantastic for me a decade or so ago, because when I got sober down in Massachusetts and I lived in North Andover, and I didn't want to go to any meetings. The only thing available were 12-step meetings, which was great. It saved my life at the time. And I didn't want to go anywhere near where I lived. So I would go over to Lawrence, which was an incredibly, for me, without any judgment of it, it was a very different demographic for me to walk into, but it felt easier to walk in there because there was no chance I would walk in, see someone I knew, until I ran into somebody doing the same thing. And they were going to, but I remember, like, that door felt like 1,000 pounds. And if there had been something that could have bridged this, I don't want to see anybody I can identify with, but I need to see somebody I identify with. I need to have this easier outreach, because then it became the most welcoming place in the world for the period of time that I manage my recovery very differently now. But that would have been great. Or some of these, I mean, I think it's so phenomenal, these ties that, we've realized. It's like what we do at Seacoast here with, when it's just with the mental health piece, which is you deal with someone's whole life. So, there's so many programs around here that, like the yoga programs and physical fitness programs, which is just sort of people get together who are trying or are sober to do a healthy activity and sort of replace what they used to spend their time with something new. I mean, that for me would have been just an unbelievable tool. And I love the fact that they're all around here. There's a sober surfing group that I've heard of recently. I mean, how cool is that?
I think that's a big piece too, that people coming into recovery think, if I give up what has essentially been my best friend, whether it's the drink or a drug, I'm never going to have fun again. My life is going to be completely boring. I'm not going to have any friends. I'm not going to have anything to do. Mm-hmm. And what people ultimately find out is that it's completely the opposite to that. You will have more friends, sober people, sober activities, camping, hiking, beach days, cornhole tournaments. I mean, get-togethers, barbecues, you name it. And that is a whole new world, not just for the person in recovery, but also for their family, because that's a big step, is that families are really included in the recovery process.
Yeah, I was bringing my boys were young, very young at the time, and I would bring them to some barbecues sometimes. And they're like, wow, who are all these people? But there was zero concern. It was just like, just go. You can do your thing and it's fine. I think to your point, because I was terrified of like having a boring life. What is amazing now, I mean, I've moved up to New Hampshire now 9 years since then. So there's this whole other circle. none of them happen to be in the recovery community. It's just not an issue. Like, it's really actually not for, depending on your circle, depending on what your life is like and your history and your story and whatever is around you, it's not actually at some, when you give it up, what I found is that people, it was almost like, oh, well, this, it takes the pressure off of other people too. I've just, maybe it's just my network, but I've just found that like, it's really a non-issue once I got past it. And once I just made it, look, no, I don't drink. Okay. You know, and it's not, it is there. It is a part of our society. We do have this weird societal obsession with booze. We do. But it's less of an issue. It was more of an issue in my own mind than it actually really was.
And I think one of the areas we're seeing more and more of is around the fitness side too. Because I know, like, we started our program with a CrossFit gym, and one of the things I quickly identified once we got in there, I already knew 8 or 10 people that were going there that I know were in recovery, and that was a big part of their pathway. And then there was a few in recovery that have never been part of the recovery community, so to speak, in terms of, you know, being identifying that way, that were in recovery and said, oh yeah, this is how I got sober, was coming to the routine. So I think there's a lot of different approaches that you can take. And one of the nice, you know, but I think fitness resonates easily because there's a lot of people who focus on fitness who just aren't interested in alcohol consumption because of their fitness goals. So you kind of have some natural fits there oftentimes. But yeah, and you're seeing more of it in, you know, yoga, I think, because yoga can be so healing for people with trauma, and there's such an intersection between trauma and alcohol use.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes, you know, dozens of people who that's how they found recovery was getting into a yoga program where they could practice mindfulness consistently. Programs like that, where you're not really giving up a social life, you might be adding something to your social life.
Right. Very good point. Well, thanks, everybody. I think this has been really helpful to get some ideas out there for people and encouragement, and would say, you know, if you at any time just feel like I don't know what I need, or you feel alone, feel free to reach out to any of us or anyone else that you know in the recovery community, or people who you know are not actively drinking, and just start a conversation about it and go from there. I think if you are willing to start talking about it, then, you know, the path will lead you where you need to go.
Yeah, and I think that for at least I'm gonna throw all three of us under the bus here. You know, we're all easy to track down. I mean, John's everywhere. You can,
Yeah.
but I mean, calling SOS, you can find John. You can find any of the fabulous people that work with him. Diane and I are both at Seacoast Mental Health Center. You can easily track both of us down. And if you're just not sure where to start, if to start any of it, you know, we might not be the right person to talk to you, but we can get you to the right person to talk to. And I think that that's just really important, because I know I didn't know where to start. And there wasn't anyone in my own personal life that I was able to reach out to. So it was really a cold slate, you know, of what to do. So I offer myself and I offer my peers here up for that initial contact.